So today I wanted to start going over builds for all of the different weapons in Arena Breakout Infinite, but these videos are going to be a little bit different because I want to keep these shorter and much more focused on the weapons themselves and go over some of the rounds you can use with these weapons and with these weapon builds. And then we're also going to have a little bit of footage at the shooting range to show how the weapon actually performs while shooting. Now, these videos aren't going to include any in-raid footage because in games like this, in extraction shooters, you can pretty much always get some footage where you're killing some super geared player that probably didn't even know you were there and make the weapons look a lot better than they actually could be. So I wanted to focus much more on the stats, the weapon builds, and the ammos you're going to want to be using. And starting off, we're going to be going over the lowest recoil build for the AKM. Now keep in mind, with full weapon builds like this, these are going to be incredibly expensive. These are only things you're going to be using super late into the end game, and once you want to go in with just the best weapon possible. So we're going to start off with the stock. We're going to be using the AK collapsible tube adapter. Then on that, we're going to have the AR premium extended tube, the red one. Then on that, we're going to have the carbine industry stock. And then on that, we're going to have the carbine stock recoil pad. Now this is going to be one of the most expensive parts of this build. In fact, this build is actually pretty cheap outside of the stock. So if you want to use a bit worse version of this build, but not spend near as much, you could use something like the AK series fab butt stock or the AK series high performance butt stock. Those are going to be much cheaper than getting all these stock pieces, and the total build is going to be substantially cheaper because of it. Then we're going over to the magazine. You can use whatever magazine you want to use, but if you're using a fully built weapon like this, I would generally recommend using the 50 rounder. Now if you want a bit higher ergo, you can use 30 rounders. You just have to play around using the 30 rounders. You could also try a 40 rounder. You just need specific rigs to be able to have the 3 tall 40 rounders. And then we're going up and we're going to be taking the AK compatible rail inline dust cover. This is where you're going to put the sight on. And then for the sight, you can use whatever you want. Sights are ridiculously expensive in Arena Breakout though. And the thing I've been using is I've just been using the compact sight top rail and the compact reflex sight. These are generally really cheap when compared to pretty much any other sight. And this is a really clean, easy to use red dot sight. Now, if you're trying to use this for longer range fights, you're gonna have to spend a lot, but something I really like using as well is using these 3x sights and then putting a smaller compact sight on top. Like you could do the 3x, you could do the compact, and then also have the compact reflex sight on top of it, so you can have close range and long range. But again, these are gonna be much more expensive. Then for our handguard, we're gonna be using the AK modular locking extension handguard. It's a bit ugly, but it's gonna give you the best stats. And then we're going to go down and we're going to have the industrial AK rear grip. Ruins the coloring of the weapon a little bit, just like the handguard, but going to give you the best stats. Then for our grip, you're going to have the 4.1 inch modular lock rail. And on that, you're going to have the lightweight tactical vertical front grip. And then for the muzzle device, if you want the absolute lowest recoil, which is the build we're going over in this video, you're going to use the precision flash suppressor. Now this means this weapon's going to be allowed. It's not going to be suppressed. Now, if you're fine with losing a little bit of recoil and actually spending quite a bit more, you're going to use the AKM compatible hexagon suppressor. This is going to reduce your ergo and your vertical and horizontal recoil, and it's going to cost quite a bit more, but suppressors in games like this are ridiculously strong. If you're shooting someone from range, it's really hard for them to know where you are, and when you're shooting, people aren't going to hear you from as far away, so people aren't going to come and try to flank you or third party you. But lowest recoil, you're going to be going loud. And on top of all of this, you can also put a 2.5 inch rail if you want to be using a tactical device, whether you want a flashlight or a laser. I really haven't found much use at all for tactical devices in Arena Breakout. Even playing a lot of armor, you would think like a laser would be good, but I don't think it really ends up being too good because you really don't need a flashlight for any part in the game. Nothing's really that dark. And I think having lasers turned on just ends up getting you killed. Now, realistically, when you're using a weapon that's this expensive to build, you're usually going to be using some of the highest tier of ammos, but depending on what difficulty you're queuing into, you can probably still get away with using level 3 penetration, which for the 7.62x39 caliber, you have T45M or you have PS. Now, these are very similar rounds. PS is going to have slightly higher pen. T45 is going to have slightly higher base damage. So T45 is technically better most of the time, but for for the price difference, I think PS is probably just generally better right now. And I think PS is probably also a bit cheaper because specifically a lot of the AI, especially on higher difficulties on Armory, usually have quite a lot of PS. HP is leg meta ammo. If you want to go for that, you can. I generally don't like using leg meta ammo, especially when you're using a higher caliber like this anyway. And if you want to go for the more expensive ammo, you have BP for penning level 4 and you have AP for penning level 5. Now, BP is a pretty big price jump up to almost 1600 a round, and AP is even a bigger price jump at almost 2600 a round. I don't think pretty much anybody's using AP. Maybe if you're like in a 4-man on the highest difficulty and you're trying to just farm Armory, maybe AP would be fine because you're going to be going up against so much heavy armored people. But I think BP is still probably going to be fine for that. His level 4 pen has much higher base damage at 59, AP has 49, so you're going to be penning, but AP is going to be doing so much less damage, and BP may even be better most of the time. So if you're really going up into ammos, I'd probably say just use BP. I think AP is probably too expensive to actually make use of. But that's the entirety of the build, the different ammos you can use for this weapon, so thanks for watching.